Hi, welcome to TNT and happy Loy Krathong. Bodies of water just like this are going to be busy this evening as families go down to their local body of water, float a krathong, make some prayers and float their troubles away. It's also going to be a full lunar eclipse tonight and a blood moon. We'll find out about that today. And it's also the time of the month where we see what internet traffic is looming around the world, which sites are going up, which sites are going down, and which ones are going sideways. So I thought we might spend a little bit of time tomorrow and have a look at the English publications in Thailand and see how their readership online is going. But there's a big U-turn to talk about today, so let's get started with TNT. And it is Tuesday. Thank you for joining us on another TNT. And thanks to those 38 people who sent us emails yesterday on tinnewtontoday@gmail.com. I was offering to tell people where I got these benign skin cancers removed and also where I got my eye surgery done 3 years ago, where they replaced my natural lenses with artificial lenses, and which has given me perfect eyesight. So it's gone very well. I will get to your emails and pass on that information as soon as I can get to them, probably sometime today, so I apologise for the delay. Now we will get on to our main story about a big U-turn by the government, but we're going to start with, well, gun control, and Thailand's Interior Minister considers tighter gun controls. A lot of this would be in the wake of the massacre up in Isan, nearly a month ago now. So this is basically a response to that. The Ministry of Interior is considering tighter gun controls by requiring every gun licence applicant to have a doctor's certificate indicating that they're mentally fit and a certificate from their employer, village headman or superior about their character. Now I was thinking that all those could probably be quite easily falsified. I'm sure I'm not the only person that's got a fake doctor's certificate sometime in the past to pass on to an employer about an alleged sick day. So when it comes to things like getting a gun, I don't think getting hold of a certificate is going to be a big hurdle. The third paragraph, the minister said that currently an applicant must meet certain requirements in order to be granted a licence to buy a gun, such as not being sentenced to imprisonment, not being an incompetent person, or a person who's committed gross misconduct. Gee, you'd certainly hope so. And down the bottom there, citing statistics for gun-related violence for 2022, the senator said that 98.5% of the cases involved illegal firearms, and he stressed the urgent need to address the problem. He said that one of the solutions would be to grant an amnesty to those in possession of illegal guns if they surrender them to the state. And other solutions to crack down hard on the online sale of guns, which is illegal. He also said that increased penalties should be introduced for possessing illegal firearms and carrying firearms in public as a deterrent against the illegal acts. So that's the latest from, well, I suppose the top of the parliamentary system. A senator speaking out in favour of further gun control. Will that happen in a country where there are so many guns floating around and, well, honestly, they're not that hard to get, is yet to be seen. But to our main story today, and U-turn time. From The Nation, the government reneges on a plan to let wealthy foreigners buy land. The draft directive allowing wealthy foreigners to buy land has been withdrawn to hear public opinions. This from Government House. The Interior Minister signed an order to revoke the Cabinet's approval for the scheme. I know a lot of American people see the word scheme as a negative. Whilst I understand that, in a lot of other English-speaking countries it's really more just a program or a proposal, so I don't see him talking about it as a scheme as him necessarily casting negative vibes on the whole thing. After the public hearing, related agencies will consider public comments before proposing a new scheme to the Cabinet. And down the bottom there, it's expected that the Secretariat of the Cabinet would include the consideration on draft directive as a special agenda at the Cabinet's meeting today. So we'll probably hear more about this today. Let's see how Thai PBS has reported on this. The government appears ready to do a U-turn on its plan to allow foreign land ownership in Thailand for residential purposes following widespread opposition. Well, most of that opposition hasn't really come in a formal way. It hasn't been discussed in Parliament, but there has been a lot of negative commentary on social media. So certainly the government has got wind of this and decided that it's a bit too much of a hot political potato to be floating around as legislation at the moment, whilst there is this informal lead up to the next election, which will be held, we think, in May next year. So this says, the third paragraph down there, if there are still people who feel uncomfortable with this plan, he said that the government for the time being will have to withdraw the edict for reconsideration and take time to clarify the matter to people. He also said the government will have to explain to foreigners why the plan has to be withdrawn. Look forward to seeing the way they word that. Losing face, of course, in Thailand is a big thing. So how they explain it to foreigners will be a very interesting thing to read. So we're going to hear more about that. It'll be obviously discussed in Cabinet today, and we might hear more of about a timeline or some modifications to the original proposal in the weeks to come. You're watching the TNT program with thanks to 5-Star Marine. If you'd like to take a private tour to, well, one of many of the beautiful little islands and beaches off the coast of Phuket, make sure you log into 5-Star Marine and have a chat with them. There's a link underneath this video. To our next story today, and Thailand's rice exports boom, Iraq emerges as the largest customer. I was surprised. Who would have thought? Iraq. Iraq has become the world's largest export market for Thai rice after shipments in the first 9 months soared 511%. Global exports of Thai rice from January to September surged 40% from last year. So Thailand's now the world's second largest rice exporter after India. Now the top 5 export markets for Thai rice are Iraq, 511% increase. Somebody made a phone call and said, do you want some cheap rice? I'm not sure how that could have increased so much in such a short time. United States up 29% is number 2. South Africa's down 3%. China up 30% in 4th place. And Hong Kong up 1.6%, a country of what, only 7 million people, the 5th biggest importer of Thai rice. A few more things on that story. The Rice Exporters Association of Thailand forecasts the country will export between 7 and 8 million tonnes of rice this year as the weakening baht boosts competitiveness over India and Vietnam. Just noting that this weakening baht narrative is a lot to do with the US dollar increasing and strengthening in price against a lot of other currencies. The Thai baht is, well, pretty much flatlining or just a wobbling up and down on the same spot. The third paragraph there. Meanwhile, Phuket will host the 14th World Rice Conference. Really? From November the 15th to the 17th, with the Commerce Minister scheduled to give the opening speech. I can't wait for that. I'll have to make sure I can get a ticket. To our next story, and Thailand to beat tourism target as Indians and Malaysians lead rush. This story from a website called Money Control, but it's been rewritten from a Bloomberg article. Thailand's arrivals totaled 7.56 million as of October the 30th, with at least 1.5 million visitors a month expected during the remainder of the year. Well, they've been predicting this 1.5 million arrivals, well, since probably the middle of this year for the last 3 months. They didn't quite reach that during October, so we'll now see whether we'll reach that during November and December, and all signs look like we will. Interesting, last week the Transport Minister mentioned that there was 3.1 million arrivals in Thailand during October. And it looks like what he meant to say, he got his numbers switched around. It should have been 1.3 million. So I called them out on a complete fabrication, but it looks like it could have been as simple as a typo. Thailand is on course to surpass its target to attract 10 million foreign visitors this year, as Malaysians and Indians lead the return of holidaymakers. Chinese travellers who topped the list before the pandemic stay home due to the nation's COVID-0 policy. So let's have a look at the graph, and we can see a steady rise since the end of last year. All the way from January up to last month, there has been an increase of tourist arrivals into Thailand. And if we have a look at the October figure, 1.309 million. So it was 1.3 million tourists arriving in Thailand last month. Not tourists, sorry, travellers, which also includes Thai people returning, for example, from holidays or visitations overseas. So I'm predicting that 3.1 million visitors reported last week was indeed probably a typo. More than 1 million Malaysians have toured Thailand this year, making them the single largest group of travellers. Almost 600,000 Indians visited Thailand in the first 9 months of the year, compared with less than 1,000 a year earlier. Well, all sorts of strange things were happening the last couple of years when tourism was very limited. But I note here in Phuket that some of these figures are a little bit the other way around, with Indian tourists by far exceeding, for example, the number 2 in Phuket, which are Malaysian travellers. But across the country, Malaysians are the number 1 visitors to Thailand this year. So interesting statistics indeed. Let's have a look at the eclipse. This is from timeanddate.com, and we note that the lunar eclipse is going to be today, well, across Thailand, not just Bangkok, and it will start at 17:44, so about 5:45 tonight, and it will be at its maximum at just before 6 o'clock, 17:59, and it will end at 20:56, which is, well, just before 9 o'clock at night tonight, Thai time. This is how it's going to actually sort of occur, and this is a timeline. You can see up there in the top right the time scale showing what's going to be happening at what time. We're now past 6 o'clock, 6:30, and from that point, around about 6:45, we're going to start losing the effect of the full blood moon or the total eclipse. So as far as Thailand's concerned, by the time we sort of get to, well, around about 8 o'clock, there's not going to be much more things to see in regards to the blood moon. The blood moon, that sort of reddish hue caused by the fact that there's no sunlight falling on the moon, and it takes on that sort of reddish hue. Not sure what the weather is going to be like later in the day. It's always a bit difficult to predict exactly in Thailand, being a very tropical sort of climate. But if you do get a clear sky tonight, and if you keep an eye on the sort of eastern horizon, you will see the blood moon. And if we just check these statistics here, down the bottom there, the next total lunar eclipse will be in 2025 in September. So you've got another 3 years to wait to see the total lunar eclipse if you miss it tonight. This is the Tim Newton Today program. We do our daily wrap-up of the main news from Thailand and a little bit of regional stuff Monday to Friday. Comes out between 9 and 9:30 Thai time on YouTube. And then on Saturdays we do our live program, you and me and a cuppa. We have a bit of a live chinwag for an hour. And from this Sunday we'll be releasing a video, be coming out every Sunday, a sort of a legacy topic, not necessarily a hot news item, but it might be a long-standing issue or something that needs further explanation. It might even be horror of horrors, an editorial. Speaking of controversial issues, this from coconuts.co, and the Singapore calls Richard Branson's rejection to a live TV debate on the death penalty lame. Just acknowledging that Singapore has the death penalty in place, very controversially, mostly for drug crimes and other serious crimes. Singapore's not taking no for an answer from Richard Branson, who last week turned down an invitation to a public debate on the death penalty with the Minister of Law. In a post published on November the 5th, the Ministry of Home Affairs reiterated again that Branson had been making untrue statements regarding the penalties for drug traffickers. If Mr. Branson is convinced he's correct, he should take up our offer of a debate and not offer lame excuses or opt out. So this is a pretty strong words from a minister in Singapore. They also said his reasons for turning down the debate do not hold water. Let's go back to an article on coconuts.co last week, which sort of frames exactly what's happening here. He said, a television debate, limited in time and scope, always at risk of prioritising personalities over issues, cannot do the complexity of the death penalty any service. It reduces nuanced discourse to sound bites, turns serious debate into spectacle. Well, he's probably right, but I tell you what, if they had the Minister of Law in Singapore doing a live debate with Richard Branson, that would be a ratings winner, particularly over the issue of the death penalty. Down the bottom there, instead, the 72-year-old Branson urged the Minister of Law to speak to local voices in a constructive, lasting dialogue. He said that abolishing the death penalty is not a Western concept and is more about universal human rights and humanity's shared aspiration to advanced equality, justice, dignity and freedom. The billionaire had called out Singapore for ramping up executions this year, at least 11, but possibly more. And Branson said, I hope you, like my grandfather, will eventually realise that it's an inhumane, brutal practice that does not save lives and casts a dark shadow on Singapore's reputation in the world. There's no evidence to support its continued existence. Just ask those in Singapore who know. Well, there was a survey done in Singapore last week by the Ministry of Law over this matter, and they claimed that there was still a 70% support of the death penalty in Singapore. Having spent a lot of time in Singapore and lived there for a time, I can say, speaking to many Singaporeans and watching this issue over some 20 years, that that 70% figure is completely bogus. And if they held a public plenary on the matter and some sort of referendum, whether that exists in Singapore law or not, I think they would find that the majority of Singaporeans would actually be against continuing the death penalty in Singapore. And with that, on the Loy Krathong Day in Thailand, I thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed the program. You might be a bit more up to date with the things happening in the country and just a few issues around the region as well. Please, if you get an opportunity, subscribe to the channel. But in the meantime, have a fantastic Tuesday wherever you are, and we look forward to doing it again tomorrow.